Meisach in Limud HaTorah and Befrat in learning in Yanei Olam Mashiach. That was the Rebbe said, right?
Okay.
So with all, whatever the shturim, whatever hype, whatever it is about Chavchas Nissen, the Rebbe said, and Thomas McCann, learning in Yanei Olam Mashiach was the Iker Hayra of the Rebbe. So here we are, some stubborn Jews that are going to be, the Rebbe said, Akshonim. What did the Rebbe say? But he's much closer. He's much closer. You got to look at that cup half full. You can't keep on. We got to keep on looking at the cup half full. He's much closer than he was 30 years ago. I promise you. Must be. So much more mitzvahs was done. So much more Torah was learned since then. Yeah, we don't see, but that's the fact. Okay, 1 second. We're on live over here.
Sorry.
Okay, no. Okay, we say this. So here we go. We're in Sivches of the Sikha. Okay, so one akuda, just as a kitzer, since we haven't learned in a while, the Rebbe here explained what it means when Chazal say mitzvahs betelis lasad lavai. How could it be? How could you say that the mitzvahs are going to be bottled if the Rambam clearly says that all the mitzvahs, the chukim, the mishpatim, every aspect of mitzvahs are nitzchi? That's also one of the things that Rambam writes in Perik Yudalef L'Chachas Malachim when the Rambam speaks about Mashiach. The Rambam says Mashiach doesn't have to perform any miracles, doesn't have to do anything unusual. He just has to be mechazik Torah and mitzvahs. That's what Mashiach is. He's going to be a person that will be hoige b'Torah over mitzvahs, kedav v'daviv, and he's going to be mechazik Yachav Chol Yisrael to be mekayim Torah and mitzvahs. And then Rambam there adds and says, because the Torah, the chukim and mishpatim, ala olam, ala olam, here Chazal come and tell us, lasad lavei, mitzvahs b'telis. So the Rebbe has an original pshat. The Rebbe's pshat for mitzvahs b'telis is, the word mitzvah means to command. When Mashiach comes, the world is going to be so in sync and so unified with the Eibishter that there's no reason to command. The world will naturally be in that state. The world will naturally express the truth of the essence of who the Eibishter is. There's no reason to command at all. And that, the Rebbe said, is the taich of halichas olam loy al tikra halichas ela halachas, that the very world itself will express the halachas of the world. So it's there. It's all begili. It's all natural. So much so that Rebbe said an amazing thing. If you remember, we learned this about a person that was buried with tachrichim that had shatnez. And the Gemara says it's no problem because mitzvahs b'telis lasad lavai. So Rebbe says, you know what's the pshat mitzvahs b'telis lasad lavai? Not that the mitzvah won't apply, but when he's going to get up for tchias and mason with that tachrichim, b'derech nes, there won't be any shatnez because the world will only function according to the Eibishter's will. So if the Eibishter says no shatnez, there won't be any shatnez. Nothing to be worried about. So he can be buried in the klein, in the shatnez. That was the Rebbe's pshat in the Gemara. From Sivches and weiter, the Rebbe is going to take this.
So it became bottle.
What becomes bottle? The command aspect of the mitzvah. The fact that you have to command is bottle. But the mitzvah, the essence of the mitzvah, not only is it going to continue, it'll be even stronger. Adarabah. It'll be completely one with Hashem. That's the Rebbe's touch. So here, from Sivches and on, the Rebbe will bring this to the Machlekesen of Bishama and Basil. One of the famous things we know, we learned in the beginning of this Sikha, and it was in the other Sikha that we learned, that Lasad Lavai, the Psakdim will change. Today we paskin like Basil, Lasad Lavai will paskin like Bishama. And the question is, Bishama is the one that's always concerned, and he's more machmer. Shama is always more stringent. But Lasad Lavai, when there'll be no nefesh bahamas, there'll be no tumah, there'll be no nisayin, there'll be no milchama in a person. Why do we have to be so extra careful? Why do we have to be so stringent like Bishamai? You would think Lasad Lavai would be paskin like Basil. But no, we're going to have to paskin like Bishamai. We learned an explanation on this in the previous sikha that we learned, but here that I was going to go through this Indian with a much deeper point on this subject. Let's see. Sivches. Chet. Page 33, the bottom of the first column. Based on what we learned here. Shakiyom da halachas hatayra lasad lavai, that's fulfilling all the halachas of Torah when Mashiach comes. She'einan b'teil l'olam. Those halachas will not be bottled forever. It's not something which is a command. The will of Hashem and the Torah will be revealed and expressed in the world naturally. Now, based on this, the The halachas, the way it is bisman hazeh, that we paskin like Basil, binyanim shenechalku b'shamai Basil, regarding many subjects where there is an argument between B'shamai and Basil. V'nifseka halacha keBasil, and bisman hazeh we paskin like Basil. Ulasad lava yachzuru v'yifseku halacha keB'shamai. And then when Mashiach comes, so Chazal tell us that it will change, and then the psak will be like Beishamai. But the truth is, Einan b'teilin la'olam. The psak of Beis Hillel, like Beis Hillel, that is, will actually not change. How's that possible? How can we paskin like Beishamai and like Beis Hillel at the same time? Is it Oster or is it Mutter? Is it Chayev or is it Pater? What's the story? It's the pshat in this. See, the Rebbe is going to give a fascinating hasber mamish, take us out of this world. But here, this is an introduction for this. Let's see. So first, let's see the explanation of the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos. The Mishnah says, "Kol machlokes shehi l'shem shemayim." Any argument which is for the sake of heaven, soifa l'eskayim. So this is an argument that continues and lasts. And zu machlokes shama v'hilla. And the Mishnah there brings a proof of this. What's considered to be a machlokes for the sake of heaven? This is the machlokes in Torah. Like Shammai and Hillel, that argued about almost every subject in Torah, and their argument lasts. What does it mean it lasts? Hillel's opinion is part of Torah, and Shammai's opinion is part of Torah. It's all part of Torah Semes. That's a machlokes that's l'shem shemayim. And the Rebbe here brings the lashon that it says there in the on the Kutei Torah on this. The Alter Rebbe explains what this means. What's the pshat that it's seifel l'skayim? You know, there's a milchus the bedichas. There's a word that the Welt says about this Mishnah. When you have a machlokes that's l'shem shemayim, people that are arguing about something, and they bring the Eibishter into the argument, and each one, no, I don't mean myself. I don't personally, I don't care, but this is what the Eibishter wants. This is what the Rebbe wants. The moment you bring in shem shemayim into the argument, this is argument you're never going to be able to settle this. If you realize that the basis of the argument is your own ego, that's what it's really all about. You pop that ego, so the argument is over. So you can forgive and forgive. But if it's a shem shemayim, it's a problem. Anyways, that's the most of the bedichas that the Welt says. But here, let's see how the Alter Rebbe and look at the Torah teaches. What does this mean? This machlokes, which is the shem shemayim. Now, the question that was asked on this Mishnah is, how can we say that this is a machlokes, that's an argument? An argument should always be negative, no? An argument means people can't come to an agreement, even if it's in the area of Torah, but this lack of clarity is something that's missing here. And this is a machlokes which will last. In the end of the day, when you have an argument, they're not arguing about theory, they're not arguing about philosophy or about a concept in Torah, they're arguing about halacha l'maaseh. What do I do in practice? A or B? It's like this or like that. So this is not something that can last forever. So in milas machlokes keleles hashnei tzdadim, when it says that the machlokes l'shem shemayim is seifel l'eskayim, what does seifel l'eskayim mean? Seifel l'eskayim means that only one opinion will last. Seifel l'eskayim means both opinions in the argument will last. How could you say such a thing? And the answer for this is because even if you paskin like one opinion, but mishum she'elu ve'elu divrei Elokim chayim, even after you paskin like one opinion, but both opinions are part of Torah. They're part of the living words of Hashem and Torah. The yesh l'divrei Beishamai gamkein shoirish l'mayla batzilus. The words of Beishamai, even though here in our world of Asiyah, in action, we don't apply his opinion, but nevertheless, it's part of Torah, and it has a source in the world of Atzilus. In practice, we don't apply the words of Beishamai. That's the pshat that's given for this Mishnah. So Seifel l'skayim does not mean practically, because practically you have to pass like one opinion. Seifel l'skayim means that it's part of Torah's emes, because in its shadish, there's validity to the point of Beishamai. Even if in Ma'asav B'Payil it doesn't carry through into Olam Hazeh Gashmi.
Well, that's the way it is now. The only difference is that Beishamai is in Atzilus and Hillel is down here. When the Mashiach comes,
wait. We're getting okay. Let's see. Now, wait. The Alter Rebbe now writes on this pshat. This is the simple pshat of the Mishnah. Mishnah is saying Elu ve'elu divrei Elokim chayim. But says the Alter Rebbe, ve'ein zeh tiritz maspik. However, this is not a sufficient answer al loshen seifel l'skayim, because the term the Mishnah uses is seifa l'skayim, in the end. In the end, in other words, in the bottom line, both of the opinions will matter. According to the pshat, we're saying in the bottom line, both opinions don't matter. Only Beis Hillel's opinion matters. But it's mashma soifa that even when it comes to applying it in our physical world, both opinions matter. So therefore, the Alter Rebbe brings Achein Ha'arizal Pirish. The Arizal says Shelo Osid Bizman HaMashiach Tia Halacha Kibishamai. This is the source of the pshat that the Arizal says that when Mashiach comes, it'll be switched. We'll paskin like Bishamai. V'zeu Soifa Le'eskayim Mamish. And therefore, this means Seifel Eskayim, that not only is Beis Hillel's opinion relevant in our physical world, but Beis Shammai's opinion will also be fulfilled physically in our world. So Seifel Eskayim is on both physically in our world. But there's an obvious question on the answer of that Arizal as well. So the Rebbe asks, and the question here is, Gam lePirish Arizal. Even according to Arizal's pshat, Shelo Osid B'zman HaMashiach Tia Halacha K'Beis Shammai. When Mashiach comes, we pass like Beis Shammai. And v'zehu seifel eskayim mamish. It means literally in our world. But harei apirish de seifel eskayim koyal das Beis Shammai. So Allah said lavai only Beis Shammai's opinion will be the halacha. Shelo ased the halacha kamaisam. V'loi al machlokes Shammai v'Hillel. But we're not going to apply both opinions, Shammai and Hillel. Ki kishi eskayim das Beis Shammai deizeh shetifsak halacha kamaisam tizbatal halacha k'Beis Hillel. If we pass like Beis Shammai, so Beis Hillel's opinion is negated. So the question is, what's going on? Bisman hazeh, the halacha is like Beis Hillel. The halacha is like Beis Shammai. So what's the seifa? Seifa means when the seifa go on. Seifa goes at the end of time when Mashiach comes. When Mashiach comes, the halacha is only like Beis Shammai, not like Beis Hillel. So the question remains a question. You're going to say something?
You said before, the Seifa means it's relevant.
Seifa means it has to be true. That's so the pshat of the Alter Rebbe. Look at the Torah. Correct. Simple pshat of what the Alter Rebbe is saying is, Seifa refers to Olam Asiyah, the Seifa of the Seder Ishtalshalos. If you look at the Seifa of Seder Ishtalshalos, there's a time period where Beis Hillel's opinion is applied, and there's a time period where Beis Shammai's opinion is applied. But the Rebbe wants to touch it kipshutai mamish Seifa in the end of all time when Mashiach comes, that there's going to be a truth to both opinions, Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. How could that be, though? Another point, and this is another important point here. How is it possible that the halacha like Beis Hillel should be nullified? All the generations, Yidden are fulfilling the opinion of Beis Hillel, and we stop. All of a sudden, boom, we switch. For Beis Hillel, this is a huge letdown. Their opinion that has been followed for thousands of years, all of a sudden, Yidden switch and drop their opinion. It's interesting how the Rebbe puts this. In other words, the Rebbe is not asking earlier in the Sikha. The Rebbe asked this question about how are we changing. The Rebbe asked on the fact that Torah has nitzchi, and if we paskin like Beis Hillel, so that should remain forever. Here the Rebbe is sort of asking mitzad Beis Hillel's perspective. If you want to look at it from a objective perspective, Beis Shammai, Beis Hillel. There's a time period where we paskin like Beis Shammai. There's a time period where we paskin like Beis Hillel. But from Beis Hillel's perspective, this is a huge yirida for them that their opinion has been accepted and applied for all these generations, and suddenly not anymore. There's the rule and the concept that you always have to go up in holiness. And here, for Beis Hillel, this will be the greatest Yerida. And V'dafke, when is Beis Hillel going to experience this tremendous Yerida? Bizman Mashiach. When Mashiach comes, basically what's going to happen is half of Klal Yisrael, or half of the yeshiva that belonged in the camp of Beis Hillel, will feel like that our opinion is wrong now, not applicable. And Beis Shammai will feel like, oh, now we have our day to shine. Now it's our opinion. Now it's our time to... But how could you say that when Mashiach comes, all of a sudden Beis Hillel's opinion is already not chashuv anymore, and it's a huge yirida for them? That can't be. Even Beis Hillel has to be elevated. I can ask the pashtus, you would think that no, maybe Lasad Lavai, Beis Hillel will come around to see what the advantage of Beis Shammai's opinion is. It's in one of the other sichos we learned that Rebbe said there that Lasad Lavai, the Bezdin will convene again, and they'll take a count, and then Bezdin will count, and the numbers will show that the majority of the Sanhedrin will pass like Beis Shammai. And then the Maila of the opinion of Beis Shammai will be recognized by the majority, including Beis Hillel as well. Beis Hillel will appreciate Beis Shammai's opinion. So it's not going to be a yirida for them. They'll see that Beis Shammai is greater than them. But here in the Sikha, though, the Rebbe takes a different approach. Here the Rebbe says a deeper pshat. V'ulai ishleima. So possibly we can say as follows. Shema shekasav Arizal shelasid bizman Mashiach tiya halacha kibishamai. This that the Arizal says that when Mashiach comes, so now things will change and we pass them like Beishamai koi alat kufa harishayna b'yemais Mashiach. Just turn the page. Is it saying you have to turn over the booklet? Page 34. Page 34. So this all refers to the first time period when Mashiach comes. After when Mashiach is going to come, there's various different time periods of how things are going to develop. It's not going to happen all at once. The Rebbe spoke about this many, many times. Generally, the Rebbe spoke about the fact that according to the Rambam, when Mashiach comes, there'll be a time period where there'll be no miracles in the world, and the natural order of the world will remain. There'll be a Beis HaMikdash, there'll be Karbanis, and even will all be in Eretz Yisrael, Aliyah L'Regel, but no miracles. And then there'll be a later time period where there'll be miracles. And the same thing also with Tchias HaMesim. There's an earlier time period without Tchias HaMesim, then a later time period when there'll be the Tchias HaMesim. There's various different tkufos, different times to this. So here the Rebbe says, when it comes to who we're going to paskin like in the first time period of Mashiach, we'll paskin like Beishamai, and that's what Arizal was speaking about. Aval b'tkufa shniya, the Yemaisa Mashiach, in a later time period after Mashiach comes, and that's Kashiyichyu HaMesim, after the time of Tchias HaMesim, and then in the time period of mitzvahs b'teilus lasad lavai, in the time when the mitzvahs are bottled. Again, the Rebbe touched the mitzvahs means the command is bottled. Azai tiskayim machloikis Shammai v'Hillel. What does that mean? Shetia halacha keshamai v'Hillel gam yochad. The halacha is going to be like Shammai and Hillel at the same time. Kiddle kaman, as the Rebbe will explain over here. Yes. What does this mean? What does this mean? Is this kosher or is this treif? Is this chayev or potter? What do you do over here? The Rebbe says it's going to be both together at the same time. Kiddle kaman. Okay, this is it's an unbelievable chiddush. It doesn't say this anywhere in Chassidus or even the Arizal that spoke about the subject. The Arizal addresses this, and he says beferish. Osad lavi the halacha is like Beishamai. Comes the Rebbe and says the Arizal addressed only the first time period. Come later on, the halacha is going to be like both Beishamai and Beisilo, and that's the pshat of the Mishnah. Seifa lehiskayim. That in the end, both opinions will be fulfilled and applied in this world. How is that possible? Okay, so the Rebbe will explain. Obviously, the first thing that you have to understand over here is that there's really no way to say that physically in the fulfillment of both opinions at the same time, it's impossible. It's either one way or the other. So when we say that both opinions will be fulfilled, loss of love, it cannot be in the physical application of it in this world. So there's something deeper over here, beruchnius, about both opinions that's going to be applied. Okay, let's see. So we'll start thinking over here now, but we won't be able to go through this whole thing this week. Just let's throw in one paragraph about this. The explanation of how you have both opinions relevant and applied in this world, at least in the ruchnistic sense, lasad lava, is as follows. Hamachleikis, the Beishamai Beisilo. The arguments that you have between Beishamai and Beisilo, and the expression that says in the Gemara, halal mitamin, v'halal mitarin. These say Tomei and these say Toir. So usually it's Beishamai that says Tomei and Beisil that says Toir. Halalu Eisrin, Halalu Matirin. Beishamai says it's forbidden and Beisil says it's allowed. Halalu Paislin. Beishamai says that it's possible, and Halalu Machshirin and Beisil says it's kosher. Ad Shanasis Toira, that is Kishtei Toiris. The Gemara uses an expression that they are divided on almost every single subject. There's almost no Peirik in Shas where you don't have an argument between Beishamai and Beisil. They're divided in every area in Torah, and it becomes like two different Torahs. If there would be people that would be doing like Beishamai, and there would be others that would be doing like Beisil, it would mamish look like two different religions, like two different Torahs. That's how often and that Beishamai and Beisil argues. That's how far apart their opinion is. But here, the Rebbe is going to try to sort of bring them back together, try to show, to unify back Beishamai and Beisil. So the fact that they're so divided on every subject, this is as far as the mitzvahs that apply as a command. And what's the point of the command of the mitzvahs? That the Yid has to see to it to impact the world and to change the world, to elevate the world. In other words, in a place and in an environment, in a reality of a world which is separated of the Eibishter. And our shlichus in this world is to reconnect everything. Now the question becomes, what's the best way to reconnect everything to the Eibishter. In that setting, in that environment, here comes the machlekes of Bisham and Misil. What's the best approach? Halicha is olam loy. To use the expression that Rebbe quoted before in the Sikha, when you're going in the ways of the world and you have to figure out how do I navigate this world and bring the world and reconnect it, I have two approaches. I have a stringent approach, I have a lenient approach, a more liberal approach, a more conservative approach, or whichever term you want to use. So Bisham and Misil haven't argued about this. So the kivin shebedar gezu. So here on this level, nikeres and mitgeshes mitzias ha'adam va'olam. Here, what's in your face? What's highlighted? What are we dealing with? An existence, a world that exists, that's independent. There's a person that has all of his personality. There's a world that has its nature. That's the basis of everything. Mitzad gidri abriye. So if you look at things from that perspective, so then yeshnam based nus hafchis. There are two opposite approaches. Chesed ugvura. You have the approach of Bisil, which is chesed, and the approach of il, which is gvura. Right? The approach of Bisil chesed is to be more giving. That it's Bisil says that it's you could connect and bring the world to connect to Hashem in a more easier way, more lenient fashion. And then there's gvura, more judgmental, more critical, to be more careful, to be not to engage in the world too much and too far. So these two approaches. So therefore, in such a kind of a setting, in such a kind of environment, gam beritzayni yizbarach v'dargazu yeshnam beizifana. In the Eibishter's will of how to fulfill this diri b'tachtonim, of how to connect the world back to Hashem, there's also two different ways, two different approaches for this. That's when it comes to a world that we live in today. So over here, they're not compatible. These two approaches, chesed and gvura, are not compatible. It's like a father that's trying to teach a child, or an educator that's trying to teach a child. So you have the chesed approach and you have the gvura approach. It's two opposite approaches. There's yimin mekarev and there's the smel deicha. There's discipline and there's love. You have to have a balance of both, perhaps, but they're not exactly the same. Two opposite things. So when you have to engage the world and connect the world to the Eibishter, so you have these two opposite approaches. It's not the point of here is the premise of the whole connection is you're taking two opposite entities and you're trying to join them together. When you're trying to join two opposite entities together, there's a struggle, and there's various ways of how to get that done. Then lost lavai, once the world changes completely, so then this kind of a struggle doesn't exist anymore. These two approaches of chesed and gvura don't exist anymore. As the Rebbe will explain, we'll see already in Mitzvah Shem next week. Okay.